want to return today to the age-old question of whether or not the juice is worth the squeeze. I want to address this question fairly, in all its aspects and all its facets, because I think the question really, most of the time, does not receive a fair handling. Now, I want to say at the outset, ultimately, whatever a man decides to do is whatever a man decides to do. If a man wants to pursue a relationship in the hopes of acquiring one, so be it. If not, so be it. This is not what this is about. This is about how these dynamics work and what is likely as opposed to not likely. So at the outset, you have a number of barriers to entry. We all know the reality of the halo effect in looks, your height, as well as your income. These are all things that can act as a barrier to entry, sometimes profoundly. If you're a sub 5, say a 3.5, and you're 5'4", and you earn very little, you're probably screwed in the vast majority of instances. And there's always a need to repeat this because a lot of people assume it's just equal across the board in terms of your opportunities. No. Depending on where you are on the look scale, the height scale, the income scale, the education scale, all of these things will count eventually towards the prospects of you acquiring a relationship. Remember, women are really picky, far more so than men, and they've never been pickier than ever. So that needs to be clarified at the outset. Women are extremely picky, and where you end up on that totem pole of looks, height, education, money, that will make a difference because, again, women are very interested in looks, they're very interested in height, and they are very interested in status. And it's important to get that out of the way at the outset, just so we all know that we're on the same page. I'm aware of these limitations. Sometimes they are profound in their effects in terms of being barriers to entry, or vice versa. If you're tall, attractive, earn well, have an education, then you're going to have a lot better chances, at least potentially. And so our starting point is with this knowledge. But broadly, again, for the purposes of this video, let's assume that you're average or slightly above average. You are what some people refer to as normies in the looks department and perhaps other departments. How realistic is it to be pursuing relationships? Again, that is every man's decision. But we need to be aware that most guys, whatever pill format they fit, red, polka dot, purple, black, green, yellow, beige, that most guys have that instinct to want to pursue women, often for carnal pleasure, but often as well for pursuing romantic relations. And the real question, again, is the juice worth the squeeze? Well, the bottom line to all this is this concept of locus of control. A lot of people talk a lot about it. I'm planning eventually on making an entire video about this concept because you'll hear a lot of people talk about it in psychology circles of locus of control and an inward locus of control or an outward locus of control. Examples being, at least in theory, what you choose to eat in terms of your diet. That is allegedly an inward locus of control. Again, I have some massive critiques of this entire paradigm, but versus you getting trapped in a snowstorm when you're on the road in the middle of Kansas. That is an external locus of control event. And I can understand why they use this paradigm again, but there will be a video forthcoming sometime in the future where I offer a more extensive critique of this model. But the model is useful for the time being because there's a lot of confusion for people when it comes to relationships and basically whether or not they are an internal locus of control thing or an external locus of control thing. And I think it's largely an external locus of control. A very good example of this, I think, is Petey the Punani Slayer, the Lord of Gingers, the Giant of Brooklyn, who acknowledges it's just pure dumb luck that he met his current wife. And yes, I am sure to read the comments about how he put in effort and work, but again, his very capacity to put in effort and work comes from a source outside of himself. The fact that he's a certified accountant, again, can everyone be a certified accountant? Obviously, this is a separate discussion. So ultimately, whether you meet someone or not is down to luck. And it has so many external locus of control factors involved. Your location, an external factor, external locus of control, which is going to have a huge effect. If you're, for example, from Topeka, Kansas, your chances of meeting someone just in terms of sheer numbers are going to be a lot worse than New York City or Chicago because there are more people in these cities. And therefore, statistically, it's more likely you're going to meet someone, and maybe, just maybe, we'll get into that in a bit, you'll meet someone that somehow fits you as a human being. And then the things I mentioned prior, like your height, your relative looks, these are also external locus of control for the most part. unless you decide to have your legs broken and get a height extension or extensive plastic surgery, etc., etc. But really what we're talking about is the concept of the unicorn, right? The unicorn, the woman that is different, but more importantly, the woman who is different likes you and is also well suited to you in terms of your personality, your well-being, and all these other things. And really what this comes down to is looking for a needle in a haystack. There is probably somewhere out there, statistically speaking, purely statistically speaking, in the world, taking into account every country, a vaginally endowed individual that might be suitable to you, right? But what is the barrier to you finding her? Well, if she's in a completely different country and you're unlikely to ever go to that country, well, you're never going to meet her, which means what's the point? And ultimately, it is a game of statistics if you want to pursue such a thing. If you want to pursue a relationship, it means wading through a lot of, how should we put it, sludge and low quality in order to find somebody who might be suitable to you. But then there are these other factors. Is she interested in you? Because maybe you find somebody you think is suitable for you, but she has no interest in you. At which point, the point becomes moot. This is a matter of luck, gentlemen, pure luck. Because, again, if this woman who might be suitable to you, that actually has an interest in you, is geographically someplace else, or even in an area of the city that you will never go to or never pass by, what is the likelihood you're going to meet somebody like that? And on top of all of that, life is of relatively short duration. And so the question emerges as to whether or not the juice is worth the squeeze. It's a question of time versus the amount of time you want to invest in this endeavor. And if you want to, so be it. Go for it. But the reality is that it's purely a matter of luck, coincidental to where you are, what you can find, and all these other factors I mentioned in the beginning, your looks, your height, your education. If you total them all up, you realize you're basically looking for a needle in a haystack. It's not that it's impossible, it's just that it's so unlikely that in many cases, the juice actually might not be worth the squeeze. Now, of course, you can try to position yourself to be in a place where it's more likely. So, for example, if you have an interest in board games, maybe you would join a board game club and you might meet somebody there. But again, the other person has to like you too. And so the relative chances of success with respect to the luck involved, the other person has to be interested, you have to be interested, you eventually have to find out whether or not you're compatible. There are all these other factors involved. And you just realize that this is the proverbial needle in the haystack, the unicorn in the haystack. It's not that it's impossible, it's just that it's very, very unlikely when you factor in all these variables. And of course this can change. If you're Chad Williamson, you probably have women throwing themselves at your feet. You're rich, you're famous, you're good looking, whatever. But most people aren't that, and I was talking, of course, about the average guy or slightly above average. And so most women won't be throwing themselves at your feet. And I think the most important thing is it really worth it for you? It is a matter of time investment. We don't have unlimited time on Earth. And if you think it's worth it spending year in, year out, even decades trying to find somebody, in light of these statistical realities, the inherent ones, looks, height, the semi-inherent ones, education, as well as location, well, I don't know. Again, geomaxing, something I've talked about a lot on this channel, is probably good for you to get laid. Is it good in order to find a long-term partnership? And I want to stress this because a lot of people misunderstand what I'm saying. Probably not. Because what are the chances are that you're going to have a lot in common with someone who speaks a completely different language, comes from a different culture, different background, views the world fundamentally differently in terms of long-term partnership? Again, so geomaxing can work in some cases, but it's not a silver bullet. And so we just go back to this principle of luck. We go back to this principle of it's a bloody needle in a haystack. And if you want to look for that needle in the haystack, for the unicorn, go ahead, but beware of the reality. It is dumb luck whether or not you find somebody who is suitable to you, who's also willing to accept you. And so much of this is mediated by factors outside of your control, outside of your quote-unquote internal locus of control, that it's a perfectly rational decision to realize that maybe it's not worth it for you to bother pursuing it in the first place. If you want to, that's fine. I'm just saying, be aware of that reality. It's all about luck, and luck is luck at the end of the day. As always, thank you for tuning in. Special thanks to my patrons and my donors on PayPal. You guys are the best. You keep the channel alive and going. Without you, the channel would not exist in its current form. As for everyone else, if you can like the video, leave a comment, subscribe if you're not yet a sub, share the video maybe, be much appreciated. Supposedly that helps out with the algorithm. Until the next time, I'll check you out then. If I'm still alive, may the gods watch over you. Bye-bye for now. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.